Connecticut's rolling hills and tranquil landscapes seemed like they were plucked right out of a storybook, a stark contrast to the bustling city life that had consumed Thomas Hawthorne's days for as long as he could remember. The Hawthorne family cabin, a hidden gem nestled amidst the dense woods, stood as a testament to a bygone era. It was a place of respite, a haven far removed from the relentless hum of city life. Thomas Hawthorne, the eldest son of the Hawthorne clan, was a man of reserved demeanor. He inherited his father's imposing stature and his mother's piercing blue eyes. With a wealth acquired through generations of business acumen, the Hawthornes were known as an enigmatic family, quietly amassing riches while keeping their distance from the prying eyes of society. On a crisp autumn day, Thomas sat at his father's mahogany desk, contemplating the path he had been treading for years. The ever-present buzz of the city had grown stifling, and he yearned for a taste of his family's roots, a yearning that was not lost on his childhood friends. Emily Turner, with her fiery red hair and freckles that danced across her cheeks like constellations, had been Thomas's closest confidant since they were children. Their bond was unbreakable, nurtured by shared secrets and endless adventures in the woods that surrounded the Hawthorne cabin. Michael Bennett, a tall and lanky figure with an insatiable thirst for adventure, had a penchant for risk-taking that often found him in situations beyond his control. His infectious laughter had a way of pulling the group together during their youthful escapades. Sarah Mitchell, the introverted artist of the group, possessed a quiet strength and an uncanny ability to observe the world through a different lens. Her midnight black hair framed her pale face, and her piercing green eyes could see the beauty in the mundane. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Thomas's office, he picked up his fountain pen and began to draft an invitation, his hands trembling with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The idea of reuniting with his friends in the tranquil embrace of the cabin was a beacon of hope in a world that felt increasingly chaotic. With deliberate strokes of his pen, he penned each word of the invitation. "Dearest Emily, Michael, and Sarah, I hope this letter finds you well. It has been far too long since our laughter echoed through the woods, and the memory of our youthful adventures has been a constant source of solace in these trying times. I extend to you an invitation, one that comes from the depths of my heart. Join me for a weekend retreat at the Hawthorne family cabin, a place where our memories were forged and where our bonds were made unbreakable. The cabin, nestled in the embrace of nature, offers respite from the chaos of the world outside. It is a place where time seems to stand still, where the rustling leaves and the soothing murmur of the brook speak of simpler times. I long to share this sanctuary with you, to relive our cherished moments, and to rekindle the flames of our friendship. Yours sincerely, Thomas Hawthorne." With the final flourish of his signature, Thomas sealed the envelopes and dispatched the invitations, each one a promise of a reunion that held the potential to rekindle the joy of their shared past. The die was cast, and the stage was set for a weekend that none of them could ever forget. As the autumn days grew shorter, the sun cast its golden glow upon the picturesque landscapes of Connecticut. The Hawthorne family cabin stood in silent anticipation, a sentinel among the ancient oaks and towering pines, awaiting the arrival of its guests. The woods whispered secrets of days long past, and the cabin walls held echoes of youthful laughter that had faded but never truly vanished. Emily Turner, Michael Bennett, and Sarah Mitchell had each received Thomas Hawthorne's invitation with a mixture of surprise and delight. It had been years since the four friends had been together, their lives having taken them down different paths, yet the memories of their adventures in the woods and the shared secrets of their youth had always remained vivid. On a crisp Friday afternoon, Emily arrived first, her fiery red hair a radiant contrast to the autumnal foliage. The winding road leading to the cabin brought back a flood of memories, and her heart swelled with nostalgia. She parked her car under the dense canopy of trees and stepped out, taking in the fresh, earthy scent of the woods. As she approached the cabin, the creaking of the porch swing greeted her, and she smiled at the familiarity of it all. The cabin's weathered wooden exterior still bore the marks of their childhood escapades. initials carved into the wood, a testament to their enduring friendship. Inside, the cabin exuded warmth, both from the crackling fireplace and from the memories it held. The rustic furnishings and vintage photographs on the walls told the story of generations past, a tale of a family deeply rooted in this land. A short while later, Michael's rugged pickup truck rumbled up the gravel driveway. He leapt out of the driver's seat, his infectious grin lighting up the surroundings. A firm handshake and a bear hug for Emily were followed by enthusiastic high fives as they recounted their past adventures. "We're in for a wild weekend, Em," Michael declared, casting an excited glance at the woods beyond the cabin. Sarah's arrival was marked by a gentle knock on the cabin's wooden door. She stood there, a quiet presence, her artistic soul reflecting in her eyes. The friends embraced, their unspoken bond bridging the years of separation. As the evening descended, the cabin was bathed in the soft glow of the fireplace. The friends gathered around the hearth, sharing stories of their lives since they had parted ways. Each revelation, from Emily's recent promotion to Michael's near-death escapade while skydiving, rekindled the camaraderie they had shared in their youth. Thomas, his usually reserved demeanor warmed by the presence of his friends, regaled them with tales of his family's history and the cabin's significance in their lives. The cabin had been in the Hawthorne family for generations, a retreat from the demands of their bustling city life. Over a hearty dinner, laughter filled the cabin, and the worries of the world seemed distant and inconsequential. It was a night of reconnection, a rediscovery of the bonds that had shaped their lives. As the clock struck midnight, the four friends settled into their respective rooms, each heart heavy with a sense of contentment and anticipation for the weekend ahead. The cabin in the woods held its secrets close, promising more memories to be forged and a deeper exploration of the friendship that had withstood the test of time. The night was calm, the woods outside the cabin enveloped in a blanket of darkness. Yet, unbeknownst to them, a foreboding presence lingered in the shadows, a legacy of the Hawthorne family that would soon cast a long, chilling shadow over their reunion. The following morning dawned with a breathtaking display of colors, as the rising sun painted the sky in hues of pink and gold. It was a perfect backdrop to what Thomas had in store for his friends on this crisp autumn day. The group gathered in the cabin's cozy dining room, where the table was laden with a hearty breakfast prepared by Thomas himself. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air, and the friends exchanged knowing glances as they settled into their seats. Thomas, always the stoic figure among them, cleared his throat, drawing their attention. His blue eyes, usually reserved, were now filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. He held a sense of purpose, one that he was determined to share with his friends. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady. "This cabin holds many memories for me, memories I cherish. But there are also family secrets, ones I've carried with me for far too long." Emily, her curiosity piqued, leaned forward, her emerald eyes locked onto Thomas. Michael and Sarah exchanged glances, wondering what their friend was about to reveal. Thomas took a deep breath and continued. "You see, the Hawthorne family has a long and storied history, one that has remained hidden from the world. But today, I feel compelled to share it with you, my dearest friends." He went on to recount the history of the Hawthorne family, tracing their lineage back to the early settlers of Connecticut. As he spoke, he painted a vivid picture of their ancestors, people who had faced unimaginable hardships in the wilderness, forging a life from the untamed land. "It was during those times," Thomas explained, "that our family adopted a way of life that was necessary for survival, a way of life that has been passed down through generations." Sarah's brows furrowed as she listened intently. Michael and Emily exchanged glances, a sense of unease settling over them. Thomas paused, his gaze fixed on the faces of his friends. "My family," he said slowly, "are what some might call cannibals." A heavy silence descended upon the room, broken only by the crackling of the fireplace. Emily's mouth opened in shock, while Michael's eyes widened in disbelief. Sarah, always the perceptive one, was the first to speak. "You can't be serious," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You're saying that your family eats human flesh?" Thomas nodded solemnly. "It's a dark legacy, one that we've kept hidden from the world for generations. But I want you to know that I am not like them. I've chosen a different path, a path of friendship and trust." The room was filled with a palpable tension. The revelation had cast a long shadow over their reunion, and the friends struggled to come to terms with the horrifying truth about Thomas's family. Emily's voice quivered as she asked, "So you're telling us that you brought us here to this cabin, knowing about your family's appetites?" Thomas nodded again, his eyes filled with regret. "I wanted to share this place with you, to reconnect with our past, but I also needed you to understand the truth, to trust me despite the darkness that surrounds my family." As the weight of this revelation settled in, the friends grappled with a mix of emotions: shock, fear, disbelief, and a lingering sense of loyalty to the person they had known for so long. The cabin, once a sanctuary of cherished memories, had become a place tainted by a chilling secret that threatened to consume their thoughts and overshadow their reunion. Little did they know that the darkness of their family legacy was not the only thing lurking in the woods, and that their trust in Thomas would soon be put to the ultimate test. As the afternoon sun gave way to twilight, an uneasy atmosphere settled over the cabin. The revelation about the Hawthorne family's dark legacy weighed heavily on the minds of Emily, Michael, and Sarah. The cozy warmth of the cabin now seemed insufficient to dispel the growing sense of dread that gripped them. Thomas, despite his reassurances that he was not like his family, could not erase the unsettling image they had painted. The friends had always trusted each other implicitly, but now, doubt loomed like a threatening storm cloud. To distract themselves from the disconcerting revelations, they decided to explore the woods surrounding the cabin, as they had done countless times in their youth. The dense foliage and towering trees whispered secrets of their own, but today they seemed to carry an eerie undertone. Emily led the way, her fiery hair glowing like a beacon in the gathering darkness. Michael, always eager for adventure, followed close behind, while Sarah, the artist, walked with a measured pace, taking in the intricate details of the forest. The woods, once a source of wonder and joy, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows and secrets. Rustling leaves and distant animal calls set their nerves on edge, and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot sent shivers down their spines. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the path grew narrower and less familiar. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and red, and the first stars began to twinkle overhead. It was a breathtaking sight, one that momentarily lifted their spirits. But the sense of unease remained, a constant reminder of the darkness that had been revealed earlier. Emily, breaking the silence, voiced the concerns that had been gnawing at her. "Do you really trust Thomas?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael hesitated before responding. "I want to believe him, Em. But what if he's hiding something from us, something even darker than what he's told us?" Sarah, who had been silently pondering, added, "And what if his family is still out there, watching us, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves?" The friends exchanged troubled glances, their footsteps slowing as they navigated the increasingly dense underbrush. The woods seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction, their once beloved playground now transformed into a haunting maze. As darkness fell, they decided to turn back and head for the safety of the cabin. But the path they had followed had vanished, obscured by the thick foliage. Panic threatened to take hold as they realized they were lost in the woods. Their flashlights cut feeble beams through the inky darkness, revealing gnarled tree roots and twisted branches that seemed to reach out for them. Each rustling leaf and distant howl of an animal sent their hearts racing. Hours passed, and exhaustion began to set in. The friends, disoriented and scared, had no choice but to huddle together for warmth and comfort. The woods had become a sinister, unknowable entity, and they were at its mercy. As the night deepened and the moon climbed higher in the sky, they could no longer deny the growing sense of dread that hung over them. The cabin, their sanctuary, remained tantalizingly out of reach, and the woods held secrets they couldn't begin to fathom. Unbeknownst to them, the true horrors of their situation had yet to reveal themselves, and the midnight hour held even darker surprises in store. The bonds of trust that had once held them together now faced their sternest test, as the friends struggled to find their way back to safety in a world that had become a nightmare. In the heart of the dense, foreboding woods, the friends huddled together for warmth and comfort, their flashlights casting feeble beams of light into the inky darkness. The haunting silence of the night was broken only by the distant cries of nocturnal creatures, and each rustling leaf seemed to echo with menace. As the hours passed and exhaustion began to take its toll, the initial shock of their predicament gave way to a growing sense of unease. The revelation about Thomas's family, the ever-present darkness of the woods, and their own vulnerability had shattered the illusion of safety they had clung to. Emily, her fiery hair now matted with sweat and dirt, couldn't shake the nagging doubt that had taken root in her mind. She whispered to the others, her voice barely audible over the sounds of the night. What if Thomas lured us out here intentionally? What if this was all part of some twisted plan? Michael, his normally adventurous spirit now tinged with anxiety, clenched his jaw and replied, "It's hard to believe that, Em. Thomas is our friend. We've known him for years, but—" Sarah, the quiet observer of the group, interjected, "But we can't deny that his family's history is deeply disturbing. We need to consider the possibility that he might not be entirely innocent in all of this." The weight of their suspicions hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating the camaraderie they had once shared. Their friendship, built on trust and shared experiences, now felt fragile, as if it could crumble at any moment. With no clear path back to the cabin, the friends decided to rest for a while, their backs against the gnarled roots of a massive oak tree. The forest around them seemed to close in, and the distant moonlight offered no solace. It was during this restless period of waiting that they heard it, a distant echoing sound that sent shivers down their spines. A low, mournful howl that seemed to resonate through the very trees themselves. "Was that a wolf?" Emily whispered, her voice quivering. Michael's eyes widened as he strained to listen. "I don't know, Em, but we need to stay alert. Wolves don't usually venture this close to human settlements." Sarah, ever the artist with a keen eye for detail, scanned their surroundings and noticed peculiar markings on the nearby trees. Carved symbols, crude and sinister, seemed to point in multiple directions, as if someone had deliberately marked their path. "These symbols," she said, her voice hushed, "they weren't here when we entered the woods. Someone or something has been guiding us, and it's not a comforting thought." The realization that they were not alone in these woods, that a malevolent force may be orchestrating their predicament, deepened their sense of dread. The bonds of trust among the friends were fraying, and their thoughts were consumed by suspicion and fear. In the distance, the mournful howl echoed again, closer this time, and accompanied by other, more sinister sounds. The night had become a symphony of terror, and the friends clung to one another, their shared past now overshadowed by the ominous present. The true nature of their ordeal was still shrouded in darkness, and the path forward remained uncertain. The friends were trapped not only by the wilderness, but by the growing uncertainty that had infiltrated their group, threatening to tear them apart as they struggled to make sense of the nightmare that had become their reality. As the eerie symphony of the night continued, the friends huddled together beneath the gnarled oak tree, their hearts heavy with suspicion and fear. The haunting howls, now accompanied by other mysterious sounds, seemed to draw closer, their origin hidden by the inky blackness of the woods. Minutes felt like hours as they strained to catch any glimpse of what lurked in the shadows. Emily, her fiery hair tousled by the night breeze, whispered, "We can't stay here. We need to find a way back to the cabin, back to safety." Michael nodded, his usual bravado tempered by the uncertainty of their situation. "Agreed, but we can't blindly stumble through these woods. We need a plan, a direction." Sarah, her artist's eye still trained on the eerie symbols carved into the trees, said, "Perhaps we should follow these marks. They may lead us somewhere, or someone might be trying to guide us." With a reluctant consensus, they decided to follow the symbols. Each step was fraught with tension, their flashlights illuminating the crude markings on the trees as they forged ahead into the dark unknown. The howling seemed to grow fainter, but the looming sense of dread remained. As they walked deeper into the woods, the trees closed in around them, casting eerie, shifting shadows. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that unseen eyes were tracking their every move. The symbols led them through winding paths and over fallen logs, and it became increasingly evident that these marks were deliberate. Someone had crafted them with purpose, guiding them deeper into the woods, away from the cabin, and further into the heart of the unknown. Sarah, her voice barely above a whisper, said, "I can't help but wonder if Thomas had something to do with these markings. What if he led us out here to what? To be lost, to be hunted?" Michael's jaw tightened and he replied, "It's a possibility we can't ignore, but it's also too early to jump to conclusions. Let's keep moving and see where these symbols lead us. Maybe we'll find answers along the way." The path they followed was a labyrinth of twists and turns, and they began to lose all sense of direction. The woods were unrelenting, and the darkness seemed impenetrable. Their flashlights became their only source of comfort in this surreal nightmare. After what felt like an eternity, they stumbled upon a small clearing in the woods, bathed in the silvery glow of the moonlight. In the center of the clearing stood a weathered wooden cabin, its windows boarded up and its door hanging askew. The friends exchanged wary glances, their trepidation mounting. This cabin, far removed from the one they had left, was an unsettling find. It seemed abandoned, forgotten in the depths of the woods, a place that hadn't seen human presence in years. As they cautiously approached the cabin, their footsteps muffled by the undergrowth, the ominous sense of being watched returned. The forest seemed to hold its breath, and a profound silence descended upon the clearing. Emily, her voice trembling, said, "We have to check inside, see if there's any sign of life or help. It might be our only chance." With a collective breath, they pushed open the creaking door and stepped into the cabin's dim interior. The air was thick with dust and the musty scent of abandonment. Rusted tools and decaying furniture filled the room, remnants of a life that had long since departed. But what caught their attention and sent a chill down their spines was a long dining table set with a macabre feast. Plates filled with strange, unidentifiable dishes adorned the table, and a flickering candle cast dancing shadows on the gruesome spread. It was a sight that defied explanation, and the friends stared in horrified disbelief at the grotesque tableau before them. The cabin, once a beacon of hope in their desperate journey, had become a nightmarish trap. In that chilling moment, their suspicions about Thomas, the symbols in the woods, and the ominous howling converged into a paralyzing realization. They were not alone in these woods, and whatever sinister force had guided them here had led them straight into the heart of darkness. The midnight feast before them was a gruesome harbinger of the horrors yet to come, and the friends were left with a choice: confront the malevolent presence that had ensnared them or remain prisoners in this sinister cabin where secrets and terror awaited in equal measure. The eerie silence that enveloped the cabin was broken only by the flickering candlelight and the friends' labored breaths. They stood frozen in place, staring at the grotesque feast that sprawled across the long dining table, each dish more macabre than the last. The plates held what appeared to be cuts of meat, but there was something undeniably unsettling about them, shapes and textures that defied any resemblance to conventional cuisine. The room was steeped in an odor that hung heavy in the air, a sickening mixture of decay and something far more sinister. Emily, her voice barely above a whisper, muttered, "This can't be real. It's some sort of sick joke, right?" But Michael's face had drained of color, and he stammered, I don't think so, Em. This is..." Sarah, her gaze locked on the disturbing tableau before them, managed to find her voice. "These dishes, they look human." The words hung in the air, a gruesome realization that sent a wave of nausea through their already frayed nerves. The implications were too horrifying to contemplate. The cabin, the symbols, the howling in the night, all pointed to a malevolent force, one that had lured them into a trap. Their thoughts raced back to Thomas, to the revelation about his family's cannibalistic history. Could he have been part of this sinister plan? Could he have knowingly led them into the clutches of whoever or whatever orchestrated this nightmare? The room seemed to close in around them, and Michael, with trembling hands, reached out to lift one of the covered dishes. The lid lifted slowly, revealing a sight that would forever haunt their nightmares. It was unmistakable, Human flesh, prepared in a grotesque fashion, served as if it were a delicacy. Gasps of horror escaped their lips as they recoiled from the nightmarish sight. The evidence was damning, the implications staggering. They had stumbled upon a horror beyond their darkest imaginings, a twisted ritual that defied comprehension. Sarah, her voice quivering with disbelief and terror, said, "We need to get out of here now." With newfound urgency, they turned to flee from the cabin, desperate to escape the horrors that surrounded them. But as they reached for the door, it slammed shut with a resounding thud, trapping them inside. Panic surged through their veins as they frantically tried to force the door open, but it was as if an invisible force held it firmly in place. The realization set in. They were prisoners in this macabre chamber of horrors. As they turned to assess their surroundings, they noticed a chilling message scrawled on the cabin's walls in blood-red letters. "You're next." The ominous declaration sent a shiver down their spines, and the room seemed to come alive with malevolence. Their flashlights cast trembling beams of light that danced across the room, revealing morbid trophies and unsettling symbols that adorned the walls. The atmosphere grew thick with dread, and the friends knew that they were not alone in this cursed cabin. The presence of an unseen malevolent force, one that reveled in their fear and despair, weighed heavily on them. Emily, her voice quivering but determined, said, "We have to find another way out, through a window, a hidden passage, anything. We can't stay here." With newfound resolve, they began to scour the cabin for any means of escape, their hearts pounding in their chests. The gruesome discovery of the midnight feast had shattered their sense of safety, and they were now thrust into a desperate struggle for survival. The cabin held its secrets close, and as they delved deeper into its sinister depths, they knew that the horrors they had witnessed were only the beginning. The sinister force that had lured them here had plans of its own, and the friends were left with no choice but to unravel the mysteries of the cabin and confront the unspeakable evil that awaited them. Trapped within the claustrophobic confines of the cabin, the friends found themselves in a nightmarish scenario that defied reason. Their desperate search for an escape route led them to every nook and cranny, but the cabin appeared to have sealed itself shut, as if determined to keep them imprisoned. Emily, her fiery determination undiminished, despite the horrors they had witnessed, said, "We can't give up. There has to be a way out of here, a hidden passage or something." Sarah, her eyes scanning the dimly lit room, nodded in agreement. "We need to stay calm and think this through. Panicking won't get us anywhere." Michael, though visibly shaken, chimed in, "And we can't rule out the possibility that Thomas might have answers. He might know how to open that door." The mention of Thomas sent a chill through their hearts. Their trust in their longtime friend had been shattered by the revelation of his family's cannibalistic history and the gruesome discovery in the cabin. Was he a victim of the same sinister force that had ensnared them, or was he complicit in this nightmare? As they debated their next course of action, they heard it. The haunting howl that had been their constant companion since entering the woods. Only this time, it was closer, more malevolent, and accompanied by eerie whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the cabin. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of incoherent voices that filled the room, taunting and tormenting them. Shadows danced on the walls, morphing into grotesque shapes that seemed to mock their despair. Sarah, her voice trembling, said, "We need to find a way to fight back. We can't let this, whatever it is, consume us." With a newfound determination, they began to search for makeshift weapons within the cabin. Rusted tools, broken furniture, and anything that could be used as a weapon were collected, their hearts pounding with the realization that their lives depended on their resourcefulness. As they prepared for a potential confrontation, they noticed another disturbing detail. The cabin's walls were adorned with portraits, each one depicting scenes of unspeakable horror. Human figures, distorted and contorted, appeared to be trapped in agonizing poses. It was as if the very essence of suffering had been captured on canvas. Emily, her voice shaking with unease, muttered, These paintings, they're like windows into a nightmare. It's as if the cabin itself is alive, feeding on our fear." Michael, gripping a broken chair leg as a makeshift weapon, replied, "We can't let this cabin or whatever's controlling it break us. We need to stay together and stay strong." The haunting howls and whispers continued, growing louder and more frenzied. It was as if an unseen malevolent force was closing in on them, its presence palpable and suffocating. With grim determination, the friends huddled together in the center of the room, their makeshift weapons at the ready. They knew that they were about to confront a darkness beyond their wildest nightmares, and their loyalty to each other was their only anchor in this nightmarish realm. As the sinister force closed in, their fight for survival would test the limits of their courage and resilience. The cabin, a malevolent entity in its own right, held its secrets close, and the friends were about to embark on a harrowing journey into the heart of darkness, where the true horrors of their predicament awaited. The cabin's walls seemed to pulse with malevolence, and the haunting whispers grew louder, an incoherent cacophony that threatened to drive the friends to the brink of madness. But they clung to one another, their makeshift weapons raised in defense, their resolve unyielding in the face of the unseen terror that surrounded them. As the oppressive atmosphere closed in, the room was suddenly filled with an otherworldly presence. Shadows shifted and converged, coalescing into a shapeless, dark mass that hovered near the cabin ceiling. It was a manifestation of pure malevolence, a force that defied all reason. Emily, her voice quaking but determined, cried out, "Who are you? What do you want from us?" The entity responded not in words, but in a sinister, guttural sound that seemed to emanate from the very depths of the earth. It was a language unknown to them, a language of despair and malevolence that sent shivers down their spines. Sarah, her eyes fixed on the shapeless entity, said, "We can't reason with this thing. We have to fight back." With a collective resolve, they launched an attack on the dark mass. Their makeshift weapons struck out with ferocity, but the entity seemed impervious to their efforts. It swirled and shifted, its shadowy tendrils lashing out in response. Michael, his face contorted with determination, shouted, "We can't give up. We have to find a way to weaken it." As they continued their frantic assault, they noticed something peculiar. The entity seemed to be drawn to the cabin's grotesque paintings, as if they held some power over it. It writhed and recoiled as they approached the portraits, as if in agony. Emily, seizing the opportunity, said, "The paintings! They're connected to whatever this is. We need to destroy them." With renewed purpose, they turned their attention to the nightmarish artwork that adorned the cabin's walls. Their makeshift weapons smashed through the frames, sending shattered glass and splintered wood flying. The entity's agonized shrieks filled the room as the paintings were reduced to ruin. As the last painting was destroyed, the entity let out one final ear-piercing wail before dissipating into thin air, leaving behind a lingering sense of malevolence that hung in the room like a noxious fog. Breathing heavily, their bodies battered and bruised, the friends collapsed to the cabin's floor. They had confronted a darkness beyond comprehension and emerged victorious, but the ordeal had taken a heavy toll on their psyches. Sarah, her voice trembling with exhaustion, said, "Whatever that thing was, it was feeding on our fear. Destroying the paintings weakened it. But we can't stay here. We need to find a way out." The realization hit them with a renewed sense of urgency. They had fought back against the malevolent force, but their survival was far from guaranteed. The cabin still held its secrets, and the sinister presence that had ensnared them remained a formidable adversary. Gathering what little strength they had left, they turned their attention to the cabin's door, which had been previously unyielding. To their astonishment, it now stood ajar, as if the entity's defeat had loosened its grip on the cabin's entrance. With cautious hope, they stepped outside, back into the woods that had become a living nightmare. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. The haunting howls and whispers had ceased, replaced by an eerie silence. Emily, her gaze fixed on the cabin, said, "We can't go back there. Whatever that place is, it's tainted by darkness. We need to find our way back to the first cabin, to the one we arrived at." With a tentative plan in mind, they ventured deeper into the woods, guided by the faint memory of their previous path. But the woods had changed since their arrival, the landscape shifting and distorting as if in defiance of their efforts to escape. The friends were now faced with a daunting challenge: to navigate the treacherous woods and uncover the secrets that had led them to this harrowing ordeal. Their trust in each other remained unbroken, but the malevolent force that lurked in the shadows was far from defeated, and their fight for survival had only just begun. The woods, once a source of solace and adventure, had become a nightmarish labyrinth, its pathways shifting and distorting as if in defiance of the friends' efforts to escape. As they pressed forward, they couldn't shake the feeling that the malevolent force that had ensnared them still lurked in the shadows, biding its time. Sarah, her eyes scanning their surroundings, said, "We need to stay focused. We can't let fear and confusion lead us astray. Our only chance is to find the original cabin and escape this nightmare." Emily, her fiery determination undiminished, nodded in agreement. "You're right, Sarah. We can't lose hope. We faced the darkness once, and we can do it again." Michael, his once adventurous spirit tempered by the horrors they had witnessed, added, "And we have to consider Thomas. What role does he play in all of this? Is he a victim or a willing participant?" The mention of Thomas hung in the air like a shadow, a haunting question that cast doubt on their longtime friend. They couldn't deny that he had been the one to invite them to the cabin, and his family's disturbing history weighed heavily on their minds. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the landscape seemed to change around them. Trees that had once stood tall and proud now contorted into grotesque shapes, their branches resembling skeletal fingers. The once familiar trails became treacherous, winding paths that led them further into the heart of darkness. The haunting howls and whispers that had plagued them earlier returned, their eerie presence a constant reminder of the sinister force that watched over them. It was as if the very woods themselves had come alive, conspiring to keep them captive. Hours turned into an eternity as they pressed on, the moon casting eerie shadows that danced on the forest floor. The sense of disorientation and dread deepened, and the friends began to question their own sanity. Emily, her voice tinged with frustration, said, "It's like the woods are playing tricks on us, changing and shifting to keep us lost. We need to find a way to break free from this nightmare." Sarah, her artist's eye trained on the surroundings, noticed a faint glimmer of light in the distance. "Look," she said, "there's something up ahead. It might be a way out." With a renewed sense of hope, they followed the faint light, their footsteps quickening. As they drew closer, they realized that it was not an exit they had found, but another cabin, identical to the one they had left behind. Michael, his voice filled with frustration, exclaimed, "Not again! This is just like the first cabin, and we know what happened there." Their hope was dashed as they approached the second cabin, the memories of the gruesome discovery and the sinister force that had tormented them flooding back with a vengeance. It was as if the malevolent presence had led them in circles, a cruel game of cat and mouse. As they hesitated at the cabin's threshold, they noticed a detail that sent a shiver down their spines. Carved into the doorframe was a single word, written in blood-red letters, "Sacrifice." The implication was clear, and the realization left them with a chilling question. Were they meant to be sacrifices in some dark ritual? Pawns in a sinister game orchestrated by forces beyond their comprehension? Emily, her voice filled with determination, said, "We can't stay here. We can't play this game. We need to find a way out of these woods, away from this malevolent force." With a heavy sense of foreboding, they turned away from the second cabin and continued their desperate journey through the shifting, treacherous woods. The sinister force that had ensnared them remained a formidable adversary, and their struggle for survival had taken them to the brink of despair. As they ventured deeper into the heart of darkness, the true nature of their ordeal remained shrouded in mystery, and the malevolent force that watched over them continued to exert its influence. Their fight for escape had become a descent into an abyss of terror and uncertainty, where the boundaries between reality and nightmare blurred into a nightmarish tapestry of horror. The relentless nightmarish journey through the woods seemed endless. The landscape continued to shift and distort, leading the friends in maddening circles. The haunting howls and whispers persisted, a malevolent presence that clung to them like a suffocating shroud. Emily, her fiery determination unwavering despite their dire circumstances, said, "We can't let this place break us. We have to stay focused on finding a way out, no matter what tricks these woods play on us." Michael, his once adventurous spirit now tempered by the horrors they had witnessed, added, "And we have to confront the possibility that Thomas might be involved in all of this. We need answers." As they pressed forward, their path took them deeper into the heart of the woods, where the trees seemed to lean in closer, their branches intertwining like skeletal fingers. The moonlight cast eerie shadows, and the sense of disorientation and dread deepened. But then, as if guided by an unseen hand, they stumbled upon a clearing in the woods. In the center of the clearing stood an old, weathered cabin, its windows covered in thick cobwebs, and its door hanging askew. It was a different cabin, distinct from the two they had encountered before. Sarah, her artist's eye searching for details, noticed peculiar symbols etched into the cabin's doorframe. "These symbols," she said, "they're different from the ones we've seen before. They seem ancient, as if they hold some sort of significance." With cautious hope, they approached the cabin, their wary eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of danger. As they entered, the air was thick with dust and the musty scent of abandonment. The interior was dimly lit, revealing remnants of a life that had long since departed. Their flashlights revealed clues about the cabin's previous inhabitants, faded photographs on the walls, a weathered journal on a dusty shelf, and a sense of history that clung to the very walls. Emily, her curiosity piqued, picked up the journal and began to flip through its pages. It was filled with handwritten entries, each one detailing the life of a family that had once lived in the cabin. As she read, a sense of dread settled over her. "This family," she said, her voice trembling, "they knew about the malevolent force in these woods. They tried to appease it with offerings, but it always demanded more." Michael, his eyes scanning the photographs on the walls, recognized one of the faces. "Look, there's a picture of Thomas here. He's part of this family's history." The revelation sent a shiver down their spines. It seemed that Thomas's family had a long-standing connection to the sinister force that haunted these woods, and their friend was more deeply entwined in this nightmare than they had ever imagined. Sarah, her voice filled with trepidation, said, "These symbols on the doorframe, they're a form of protection, a way to keep the malevolent force at bay. We should learn from the mistakes of this family." With newfound determination, they decided to investigate the cabin further. As they explored its rooms, they uncovered more clues about the family's history and the horrors they had faced. It was a grim tale of desperation, sacrifice, and a struggle for survival in the face of an insatiable evil. But the most unsettling discovery awaited them in the cabin's basement. As they descended the creaking stairs, they were met with a sight that would forever haunt their nightmares. A chamber adorned with crude altars, ancient symbols, and a fetid odor that turned their stomachs. In the center of the chamber stood a grotesque statue, a twisted representation of the malevolent force that had tormented them. It was surrounded by offerings, bones, and relics of the family that had once lived in the cabin. Emily, her voice shaking with horror, said, This is a place of worship, a place where they made sacrifices to appease the darkness." Their realization was punctuated by a chilling presence that filled the chamber. The malevolent force that had been their constant adversary seemed to coalesce in the room, its oppressive presence weighing on them like a physical force. With a sense of impending doom, they knew that they were not alone in the chamber. The sinister force that had ensnared them was about to reveal itself, and the friends were left with no choice but to confront the true horrors that awaited them in the heart of darkness. As they stood in the chamber, surrounded by echoes of the past and the looming presence of the malevolent force, their fight for survival reached its most critical juncture. The secrets of the cabin, Thomas's connection to the family's history, and the true nature of the sinister force were about to be unveiled, and the friends were left with no choice but to confront the darkest depths of their ordeal. In the dimly lit basement chamber, a heavy silence hung in the air, as the friends stood surrounded by the relics of the family that had once lived in the cabin. The grotesque statue at the center of the room seemed to pulsate with malevolence, its eerie presence an embodiment of the darkness that had tormented them. Emily, her voice quivering with dread, whispered, "We need to find answers down here. There must be something that can help us break free from this nightmare." Michael, his eyes fixed on the altar covered in offerings, said, "And we need to figure out what Thomas's role in all of this is. This is his family's cabin, and it's clear they had a long history with that malevolent force. Sarah, her artist's eye scanning the room for details, noticed a journal tucked away on a dusty shelf. She reached for it and began to leaf through its pages, revealing the sinister secrets of the family who had once dwelled in the cabin. The journal chronicled their desperate attempts to appease the malevolent force. Entries described offerings made to the entity, rituals performed to ward off its wrath, and the family's growing despair as their sacrifices yielded no respite from the darkness. As Sarah read, she stumbled upon an entry that sent a chill down her spine. It says here that the entity demanded the sacrifice of a chosen one from the family. It consumed their souls and granted it more power. Emily, her voice laced with dread, said, "That's what happened to Thomas. He was the chosen one from his family. But why did he lure us here? Was it to offer us as sacrifices?" Before they could ponder this disturbing revelation further, a presence filled the chamber, a malevolent force that seemed to materialize from the very shadows. The room grew colder, and their breath misted in the frigid air. The entity, the source of their torment, manifested itself before them as a swirling mass of darkness, its form ever-shifting and nightmarish. It radiated an aura of malevolence that sent shivers down their spines. Emily, her voice quivering but resolute, said, "We need to confront this thing, to break free from its grip once and for all." With makeshift weapons at the ready, they launched an attack on the entity, their determination undiminished by the horrors they faced. But the entity proved elusive, its form constantly shifting to evade their blows. As they fought, the entity's whispers filled the chamber, a cacophony of despair and madness that threatened to overwhelm them. It taunted them with secrets from their past, their fears, and their deepest regrets, trying to break their will. Michael, his eyes blazing with defiance, shouted, "We won't succumb to your darkness. We'll find a way to stop you." With newfound determination, Sarah approached the grotesque statue at the center of the room. She noticed that it held a pendant around its neck, a pendant that seemed to be the source of the entity's power. Without hesitation, she reached out and snatched the pendant from the statue's neck. The moment she did, the entity let out a deafening shriek, a sound that reverberated through the chamber like a thunderclap. Its form began to disintegrate, its malevolence dissipating into the air. With a final desperate wail, the entity vanished completely, leaving the basement chamber in silence once more. The friends stood there, their hearts pounding, their bodies battered and bruised, victorious in their battle against the darkness. But their triumph was tempered by the unsettling revelation of Thomas's role in the family's history and the malevolent force they had confronted. They knew that the true nature of their ordeal had yet to be fully unraveled, and they were left with a burning need to find Thomas and confront him about his involvement. With the pendant in their possession, they climbed the basement stairs and emerged into the cabin, their minds filled with questions and a sense of urgency. The sinister force that had ensnared them may have been defeated for now, but their fight for answers and escape was far from over. As they stepped outside the cabin, they found themselves back in the woods, the moon casting an eerie glow over the landscape. The haunting howls and whispers had ceased, replaced by an ominous stillness. Emily, her gaze fixed on the darkened woods, said, "We need to find Thomas, to confront him about what we've learned. He might be our only link to breaking free from this nightmare." Their journey through the woods had led them to a chilling revelation, one that deepened the mystery of their ordeal. The malevolent force that had tormented them was not the only enemy they faced. They now had to confront the truth about Thomas's involvement and his family's sinister history. As they ventured deeper into the woods, their determination to find answers and escape the darkness remained unbroken, even as the true horrors of their ordeal continued to unfold. They never found Thomas, but only found their way back to civilization. Each friend carries the weight of their shared experience, forever bound by the gruesome secrets they uncovered. The cabin in the woods becomes a dark legend in the popular states of the United States, a story whispered around campfires as a cautionary tale of trusting old friends and family ties.